I always thought love at first sight was something out of the movies. One of those made-up stories just to make us believe that life can be lighter than it really is. Until that day. Until that endless line at the supermarket in Mexico City. I was exhausted, sweating, out of patience, when I saw Sophia laughing by herself, and something in me just wanted to take a chance. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was just the urge to laugh, but I let out the dumbest possible line. "You're about 36, right? I'm 28. Perfect combination for us to run away from here and never look back." She looked at me, surprised, and I swear I had no idea that silly joke would change everything. But hey, fate really does have a sense of humor. If you've ever experienced something like this, share this video with someone. Who knows? Maybe another story will start in some random line. I've never been one to strike up conversations with strangers, especially not in a supermarket line. I always thought those situations were just a test of patience, a reminder that adult life is made of small waits and long silences. But that day, something was different. Maybe it was the way the sun was beating down outside, or the accumulated exhaustion from a tough week at work. Maybe it was just the desire to feel like I could still surprise myself. The fact is, when I saw Sophia laughing to herself, looking at her phone, I felt an almost childish urge to approach her. I stood there, mentally rehearsing 1,000 lines, all of them sounding ridiculous. "Hi, how are you?" seemed too formal. "Do you come here often?" was too cliché even for me. But then, suddenly, without much thought, I blurted out, "You're about 36, right? I'm 28. Perfect combination for us to run away from here and never look back." Just like that. The words came out before I could regret them. For a second, I thought she would ignore me, or worse, think I was some kind of creep. But to my surprise, she looked at me with a half smile, as if she was waiting for a break in the routine as much as I was. She laughed, and that laugh was like an invitation to continue. "Do you always hit on women like this in the supermarket line, or is today a special day?" she replied in a playful tone. I laughed too, a bit awkwardly, but relieved that I hadn't been rejected outright. Today is a special day. I think the universe decided to give a break to those who were tired of waiting, I answered, trying to keep the mood light. And suddenly, the line was no longer just a line. It became an unlikely stage for an encounter that until then, I didn't even know I was looking for. We started talking about mundane things, the weather, the absurd price of fruit, the slowness of the checkout. But little by little, the conversation became more personal. Sophia told me she had recently moved to Mexico City after a difficult phase in the United States. I shared a bit about my routine, about the job that never seemed to end, about the nights I just wanted to get home and forget about the world. It was strange how, in just a few minutes, we were already talking about things I usually only shared with long-time friends. As the line moved slowly, I felt like time had slowed down just for us. Each of her answers was a new chance to take a risk, to show a little more of who I really was. And deep down, I knew that moment, as simple as it was, had the potential to change everything. It wasn't just about flirting or killing boredom. It was about feeling that, even on the most ordinary days, life can surprise you in a beautiful way. In the end, I think that's what kept me there, insisting on the conversation, even with the fear of looking foolish. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And it all started with a silly line said on impulse in a random supermarket queue. As we talked, the line transformed into a sort of improvised stage, with characters that seemed to have walked out of a movie. There was Mr. Manuel, a man in his late 50s with a stubble and a worn-out Club America cap. He was the king of sarcasm, the kind of person who joked about everything, even his own misery. With every complaint about the delay, he would drop a gem. "Calm down, people. The important thing is to have your health and a good stock of tequila at home." Everyone would laugh, and even the tension of waiting seemed to lessen a bit. On the other side, there was Isabella, the the supermarket cashier, a young girl with a dreamy look and a shy smile. She seemed a bit out of place there, as if she were thinking about other things while scanning the products. Every now and then, I would catch her staring at us with a glimmer of curiosity in her eyes. It was as if she were watching a soap opera scene, imagining what would happen next. And of course, the X figure couldn't be missing. In the middle of the line, a woman appeared with a not-so-friendly expression, staring at Sophia with contained anger. "Daniela, what are you doing here?" Sophia asked with a tone of surprise and discomfort. The so-called Daniela replied with venom disguised as politeness. "Just came to buy a few things. I didn't know you'd moved on to new company so quickly." Sophia rolled her eyes and tried to ignore her, but you could see the situation had shaken her. I stood there, not quite sure what to do, feeling the heavy atmosphere that had settled in. But luckily for me, Mr. Manuel decided to step in again. Well, 2 ladies fighting over a good catch. This almost makes us forget we've been waiting for an hour," he commented, with a mischievous grin. Daniela shot him a death glare, but didn't respond. Sophia thanked him for the support with a discreet smile. Besides them, there was a little boy running through the line, a soccer ball in his hands. He bumped into me a few times, apologizing with an innocent look. It was funny how in the midst of that chaos, he seemed oblivious to everything, living in his own world. Every so often, he would stop to watch us with genuine curiosity. It was as if he were learning about life right there in the supermarket line. Each of those characters, however brief their part, added an extra layer to the scene. Mr. Manuel's sarcasm, Isabella's shyness, Daniela's acidity, the boy's innocence. All of them somehow were part of that moment, of that story unfolding right there between product aisles and cash registers. And I, in the middle of it all, felt like a privileged spectator witnessing a small miracle. Because in the end, that's what was happening there. An unlikely encounter in an unlikely place with unlikely people. And somehow, it all made sense. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring us together right there, at that moment, to show us that life can be surprising, even in the most mundane places. The presence of that supporting cast only reinforced the feeling that I was experiencing something special. They were like a mirror, reflecting different aspects of life, different ways of facing the world. And in the midst of it all, I felt more alive, more connected, more part of something bigger. Just when the line seemed to finally be getting close to the checkout, the universe decided to play another trick. Out of nowhere, the system crashed. The cashier's screen went blank, the lights flickered, and a tense silence fell over the place. The cashier, Isabella, froze, not knowing what to do. "Oh no," someone shouted from the middle of the line. "Of course," another replied with a tone of resignation. Mr. Manuel, of course, didn't miss the chance to make another joke. "Calm down, folks. Now we have more time to philosophize about life." But despite the jokes, you could feel the irritation growing in the line. People started to grumble, to look at their watches, to exchange impatient messages on their phones. That moment of connection we had created seemed to be falling apart, giving way to frustration and boredom. Sophia sighed beside me with a look of disappointment. "I guess the universe doesn't want us to leave here anytime soon," she commented with a bitter smile. I tried to keep my spirits up, but I confess I was also starting to feel impatient. We had already talked so much, had already created such a strong connection, and now everything seemed to be going down the drain because of a system failure. It was as if fate were testing us to see if we were strong enough to overcome another obstacle. But at the same time, I felt that this situation could be an opportunity, a chance to deepen our conversation even more, to show that we could overcome any challenge together. "What if we use this time to do something decent?" I suggested, with a smile. "Like what?" she asked, with a curious look. "I don't know. Tell secrets, make plans for the future, invent a crazy story about the lives of the other people in line, I replied with a fun tone. Sophia laughed, and that laugh was like a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day. You're unbelievable. You can turn any boring situation into something fun, she commented, with a look of admiration. I smiled back, feeling a warmth in my chest. It was good to know I could make her smile, that I could bring a little lightness into her life. And that's how we turned that moment of waiting into a game. We started inventing stories about the people in line, imagining their jobs, their dreams, their fears. We laughed a lot and even forgot about the delay and the irritation of others. Mr. Manuel, of course, joined in the fun, making hilarious comments about everyone. Isabella, though shy, also joined us, giving discreet smiles and making timid comments. Daniela, on the other hand, kept a stern face, staring at us with a look of disapproval. But we didn't even care. We were so involved in our game that nothing else mattered. The line had ceased to be a place of waiting and had transformed into a space of creation, of fun, of connection. And, in the midst of it all, I realized that life is truly a box of surprises, that the most unexpected moments can be the most special, that obstacles can turn into opportunities, and that even in the most mundane places, you can find incredible people who change your life forever. This system crash, which at first seemed like a disaster, turned out to be the best thing that could have happened, because it was there, in that moment of waiting, that our connection truly strengthened, that we proved to ourselves that we could overcome any challenge together, and that the universe, no matter how much it tried to test us, wasn't going to be able to tear us apart. With the system still down, the line seemed to have become a limbo, a separate place where time stood still. But somehow, we didn't care anymore. The initial irritation had given way to a strange calm, as if everyone had accepted that we were going to be there for a while. And, in the midst of that calm, our conversation deepened. We started talking about more serious things, about our fears, our dreams, our frustrations. Sophia told me she had lost her husband a few years ago in a car accident. She talked about the pain of loss, about the difficulty of moving on, about the feeling that she would never be happy again. I listened to everything in silence, with a heavy heart, trying to imagine the pain she had gone through. I've never been very good at dealing with other people's suffering. I've always felt a bit lost, not knowing what to say or do. But with Sophia, it was different. I felt a genuine need to be there, for her to offer a friendly shoulder, to show her that she wasn't alone. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I can't even imagine what you've been through, I said, with a sincere tone. But know that I'm here for you, for whatever you need. She looked at me with a sad but sincere smile. Thank you, Ricardo. It's good to know there's someone who cares, she replied. Her voice choked with emotion. And at that moment, I felt that our connection had become something much bigger than a simple supermarket flirtation. We had created a bond of trust, of respect, of friendship. I also opened up to her, telling her about my insecurities, about the fear of not being good enough, about the feeling that life was passing by too quickly and I wasn't enjoying any of it. I talked about my job, which consumed most of my time but brought me no satisfaction. I talked about my dreams of being a writer, of traveling the world, of living a more free and authentic life. Sophia listened to me attentively, without judging, without interrupting. She seemed to understand exactly what I was feeling, as if she had been through it all before. You have to follow your dreams, Ricardo. You can't let fear paralyze you, she told me in an encouraging tone. Life is too short to spend it doing things that don't make us happy. Her words touched me deeply. I had always known I needed to change my life, but I had never had the courage to take the first step. But after listening to Sophia, I felt like I had gained new strength, new motivation. I knew I couldn't go on living like that, stuck in a routine that suffocated me. We continued talking for a long time, exchanging confidences, sharing experiences, giving each other advice. With every word, every gesture, our connection grew even stronger. It was as if we had known each other for years, as if we had already lived many lives together. And in the midst of that conversation, I realized that Sophia was not just a beautiful woman I had met in the supermarket line. She was an incredible person with an inspiring life story, with an admirable inner strength. She was a friend, a confidant, a soulmate, and I, without knowing how, had been lucky enough to find her. That moment of waiting, which at first seemed like a punishment, had turned into a blessing, because it was there, in that temporal limbo, that we truly connected, that we opened our hearts to each other, and that we discovered that, even in the most unlikely places, we can find people who change our lives forever. The system crash had created a bubble of time and space, an oasis of calm in the middle of the supermarket chaos. The people around us grumbled impatiently, but the two of us seemed oblivious to it all, trapped in our own universe. The conversation had deepened so much that I felt as if I were looking directly into Sophia's soul. And then, suddenly, she took a deep breath as if preparing to dive into deep waters and said, "Ricardo, there's something I've never told anyone, not even my best friends." My heart raced. I knew that what was coming next would be important, something that would change our relationship forever. I looked at her with a mix of curiosity and apprehension and waited for her to continue. Sophia began to talk about the day she lost her husband. She told me how they met, how they fell in love, how they built a life together. She spoke of the dreams they had, the plans they made, the future they imagined. And then she reached the crucial point of the story, the accident. She told me about the phone call she received in the middle of the night, the rush to the hospital, the devastating news that changed her life forever. She spoke of the pain of loss, the difficulty of moving on, the feeling that she would never be happy again. As she spoke, tears began to stream down her face. They weren't silent tears, but tears of pain, of anguish, of suffering. Tears that carried the full weight of a past that couldn't be changed. I watched her in silence, my heart aching, feeling her pain as if it were my own. I've never been very good at dealing with other people's suffering. I've always felt a bit lost, not knowing what to say or do. But with Sophia, it was different. I felt a genuine need to be there for her, to offer a friendly shoulder, to show her that she wasn't alone. I wanted to protect her from all the pain in the world. I wanted to make her smile again. I wanted to make her believe that life could be beautiful, even after so much sadness. When she finished speaking, I hugged her tightly, trying to convey a bit of comfort, of affection, of hope. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I can't even imagine what you've been through," I whispered in her ear. "But I want you to know that I'm here for you. Forever. For whatever you need." She held me tight, as if drawing from me the strength she needed to go on. "Thank you, Ricardo. It's good to know there's someone who cares," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. And at that moment, I felt that our connection had become something much bigger than a simple supermarket flirtation. We had created a bond of trust, of respect, of friendship. A bond that went beyond words, that was based on understanding, on empathy, on love. I knew that, from that moment on, my life would never be the same. I had found a special person, a person who completed me, a person who made me want to be better. And I was willing to do whatever it took to make her happy. Even if it meant facing all the obstacles in the world. Time seemed to have stopped, but, like everything in life, the bubble of silence and intimacy that surrounded us finally burst. The supermarket lights flickered back on, a sign that the system was coming back to life. the manager's voice echoed through the aisles, announcing that the checkouts were operational again. Slowly, the line began to move, breaking the spell of our private little universe. A wave of relief and frustration washed over the people around us. Relief that they could finally get on with their lives. Frustration at having wasted so much time waiting. But for me and Sophia, the resumption of activity was bittersweet. On one hand, I was eager to get out of there and continue our conversation in a quieter place. On the other, I felt a certain fear that the magic of that moment would be lost once we returned to reality. As the line moved forward slowly, I tried to think of something to say, something that could prolong this unlikely encounter, but words failed me. I felt like an insecure teenager, not knowing how to act around the girl who had stolen my heart. Sophia seemed to sense my hesitation, for she gave me a sweet, encouraging smile. "Don't be nervous, Ricardo. We can pick up where we left off," she said, with a sparkle in her eyes. Those words gave me new courage. I took a deep breath and decided to follow my gut. When it was our turn at the checkout, I turned to Sophia and, with a nervous smile, made the invitation. "How about we grab a coffee? There's a coffee shop nearby that looks really cozy. We could continue our conversation there." Time seemed to stretch on as I waited for her answer. Every second was an eternity, every glance a promise. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, as if it were about to leap out. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, Sophia broke into a radiant smile and replied, "I'd love that, Ricardo. A coffee sounds perfect." An immense relief washed over me. I smiled back, feeling a joy I hadn't experienced in a long time. That simple yes was like a winning lottery ticket, a confirmation that the universe was conspiring in our favor. I paid for my groceries as quickly as I could, trying to hide my excitement. Sophia did the same, a mischievous smile on her face. When we left the supermarket, the sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The gentle evening breeze carried with it a scent of flowers and hope. I took a deep breath, feeling the energy of that moment wash over me completely. "This way," I said, guiding Sophia towards the coffee shop I had seen across the street. As we walked side by side, I felt as if I were living a dream. A dream that began in a supermarket line and was now heading towards an uncertain but promising future. I didn't know what destiny had in store for us, but I was sure that I wanted to be by Sophia's side, facing all the challenges and celebrating all the victories. That invitation for coffee was much more than a simple date. It was a portal to a new world, a world of possibilities, of discoveries, of love. And I was ready to walk through it, hand in hand with the woman who stole my heart in the supermarket line. We entered the coffee shop and, for a moment, everything seemed to slow down again. The atmosphere was cozy, with warm yellow lights, the smell of fresh coffee and soft jazz playing in the background. We sat near the window, and I realized that, despite all the chaos of the supermarket, inside here, it was just us. Sophia ordered a cappuccino with cinnamon. I went for a strong espresso. The waiter smiled, as if he already knew this meeting was special. At first, the conversation was light, almost shy. We talked about travel, favorite foods, small dreams we hadn't yet fulfilled. But little by little, the atmosphere began to change. Sophia's gaze grew deeper, and I felt there was something unsaid, a tension in the air, as if we were on the edge of an emotional cliff. It was then that, without planning it, I found myself telling her about my biggest fears. I talked about the fear of never moving forward, of not being enough, of spending my whole life waiting to something that might never come. Sophia listened to me with a rare attentiveness, without judgment, just presence. When I finished, she held my hand across the table, and in that touch there was a silent promise of understanding. She then shared more about her grief, about how for a long time she felt she didn't deserve to be happy again. She said that sometimes she still woke up in the middle of the night expecting to hear her husband's voice, but that in that moment, sitting with me, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. It's strange, Ricardo, but it feels like life is giving me a second chance. And that scares me, but it also makes me want to take the risk. The silence that followed was intense, but not uncomfortable. I looked into her eyes and, on impulse, said, "Sophia, I don't know what will become of us from now on, but I want to try. I want to live whatever is possible, without fear, without rush, just with truth." She smiles, emotional, and I felt that was the moment to be even more honest. If I asked you to stay with me, for us to build something new, would you accept? My voice came out low, almost a whisper, but filled with sincerity. Sophia was silent for a few seconds, her eyes welling up, and then she answered, "I would accept, Ricardo, because for the first time in a long time, I want to believe that I can be happy again." At that moment, the waiter appeared to let us know the coffee shop was about to close. We laughed together, breaking the tension, and got up to leave. Outside, the night was cool, and we walked slowly, as if we didn't want the moment to end. Every step was a confirmation that something important had happened there, something that would change our lives forever. On the way to her place, we talked about everything and nothing, laughed at silly things, exchanged knowing glances. When we reached her door, Sophia hugged me tightly, and I felt that embrace was a new beginning. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I had almost given up on myself." In that instant, I knew that regardless of what the future held, this was the beginning of a new story, a story that started by chance in a supermarket line, but was now ours, and only ours.